What's up, guys? Welcome back to another daily Bible reading snapshot. Today in the Old Testament, we are studying Judges 12, 13, and 14. And the story in Judges 12 continues what we just learned about Jephthah. Jephthah is still kind of the main character here. It says that he, was from Gilead. And Gilead now enters a conflict with Ephraim. And if you can imagine the Jordan River running right down the middle of the map here, on the east side over here, you've got Gilead, and on the west side over here, you've got Ephraim. And they did not invite each other over to the fight, and because of that, there's this new conflict between the two of them. So basically, the people that are in Gilead have a test for these people, because if you are from Ephraim, there's something that you're not able to do. So check it out. This is verse 5. If you have a Bible in front of you, this is verse 5 of Judges chapter 12. It says, "And the Gileadites captured the fords of the Jordan against the Ephraimites. And when any of the fugitives of Ephraim said, 'Let me go over,'" okay, go over the Jordan River, "the men of Gilead said to them, 'Are you an Ephraimite?' And if they said no," it says right here in verse 6, or set 5, "if they said no, they said to them, 'Okay, then say this word for me. I have a test for you. Here's a way you can test whether you're from Ephraim or from Gilead.' It says, 'Say the word Shibboleth.' Okay? And they would say the word Sibboleth. Okay? Shibboleth, Sibboleth. Okay, what's the difference? Well, because Shibboleth, they can't pronounce the SH, they just say Sibboleth. Okay, so they said it differently. They had two different accents, which is interesting. I'm wearing my hill country, right? Those people in Texas, they say words a little bit differently than those of us in California, unless you got a Texas accent. But anyway, they say words a little differently. Same thing with Ephraim and Gilead. And when they said things a little bit differently, the problem was it was a dead giveaway that they were not really from Gilead. So they were fighting with each other. So it says, because of this, Jephthah put to death 42,000 of the Ephraimites. The Ephraimites, remember, from the tribe of Ephraim, they were Israelites too. So within the book of Judges, you see multiple civil wars that happen. 42,000 men. Think about that. 42,000 men put to death for crossing over the Jordan River. This is a horrible, horrible time for these Israelites. So we see that here. Very interesting, weird little story here about these Shibboleth, Sibboleth accent problems. And then it says there was 3 more judges that we see here at the end of chapter 12. And then the important person who comes in, who actually spends like 4 chapters talking about him, the person named Samson. So it says Samson, in chapter 13, his birth was promised when the angel of the Lord visited his mom, and then his dad and his mom. And then they have this conversation where they ask him, "What's your name?" And the angel of the Lord in verse 18 says, "Why do you ask my name? Seeing that it is wonderful." Okay, wonderful. Which you might say, okay, wonderful. It's a cool name. It's a long name. Is his name wonderful? Right? No, that's not what it is. But we see even in the book of Isaiah, we see that Jesus, the son that's going to be born, will be called Wonderful Counselor. It seems like it's a euphemism. It's a way of saying God's name. It's wonderful. It's not like these other names. It's higher. It's above that. So we see that here in Judges 13, and when the angel of the Lord leaves, they don't know it's the angel of the Lord, by the way. When the angel of the Lord leaves, he goes up in the fire. So it's like they give this burnt offering, and then the angel just goes shoo, and goes up in the fire. And when Manoah sees this, that's Samson's dad, he says, "We are going to die because we just saw God." That's who we were talking to this whole time. Because every time that someone sees God, what is the next thing that happens, right? They either die or they think they're going to die because they know they deserve to die. So that's what happens in Judges 13. We see Samson getting married, or almost getting married, in chapter 14. It says, he found a Philistine woman, which, remember, were you supposed to marry a Philistine if you were an Israelite? The answer was no. So Samson, by the way, is not a good guy. He's not a godly guy. He's not like this great role model. He's not a good guy. So anyway, he wants to go marry this Philistine lady. His parents say, "Don't do that. Please don't do that." And he says, no, I'm going to do it. And it says this was all from the Lord, that God was using this bad decision to do something for his glory in the end. So this is what happens. He goes and he's about to marry her. And then he, on the way, kills a lion, which is kind of crazy. Lion in the road. He just kills it with his bare hands. And he sees it later on. He sees honey in it, which is just this weird phenomenon where these bees set up a hive in the carcass of the lion, which is weird. And he goes to these Philistines and he says, "I've got a riddle for you. I've got this riddle that if you're able to solve, I'll give you 30 fresh linen garments and 30 changes of clothing, which was expensive back then. And they try to guess it, they can't do it. And then the fiance, the one who's going to marry Samson, who's also a Philistine, the Philistines get to her and say, hey, you should tell Samson to tell you what the secret is, what the riddle is. And she agrees to do that, and she presses him for 7 days. It says during the whole feast, she's weeping for 7 days. If you could imagine your girlfriend or your fiance weeping for 7 days, I'm pretty sure you would tell her anything. And that's exactly what happens with Samson. So he tells her the idea here, and when she goes and tells the Philistines on the last day of the festival and the feast here, they say to Samson, we figured out your riddle, and they've got it. And Samson says something that's not super nice here in verse 18 that you can read yourself. And when he does that, he leaves, gets so mad, he goes down to Ashkelon, which was another Philistine city. He kills 30 men, takes their clothes, and gives it to them as the reward for solving the riddle. So, and at the end here, verse 20, it says, Samson's wife was given to his companion who had been his best man. So this is a bad day for Samson, okay? You see how doesn't feel good to be Samson right now. Obviously, he was doing sinful things, but at the same time, this is a bad day for Samson. And we're going to see Samson get his revenge on these Philistines tomorrow. But that's a lot from today's DBR in the Old Testament. Let's turn to the New Testament. Sorry we're going so long, but I think that there's so much about Samson's life and about the judges that just requires so much explanation and is a very interesting story. Although most of it is a bad story, it's very interesting. So anyway, that is the book of Judges for today. Luke chapter 9, verses 37 to the end of the chapter here. Another long set of reading where you have a lot of different stories that are put together. So this is not just we're reading one scene at a time. It's not like the Apostle John, who likes to write big, long scenes with a lot of detail. This is like, there's a lot of detail here, but there's a lot that fits in here. And one thing that we see that's repeated over and over again is the idea of following Jesus. And some of them, they have this argument, who's the greatest? And Jesus says, look, if you're going to follow me, if you're going to be the greatest, you got to serve people, even like these little children. Then he says later, when these Samaritans don't follow him and don't embrace him, James and John want to go light them up, like send fire from heaven. And Jesus says, stop. We're not going to do that right now. And then at the end of the chapter, people want to come follow Jesus again. And what Jesus says to them is he pushes them back. He says, do you want to follow me, really? Okay, then leave everything. And they're like, well, I don't want to leave everything. And they keep doing this, and the end of the chapter ends with this punchline. One last person in verse 61 comes up to Jesus and says, I will follow you, Lord, but let me first say farewell to those who are my home. And Jesus said, no one who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of God. Nobody who wants to serve God and work for his kingdom, but at the same time loves this world and wants to be all about this world, you can't do both of those at the same time. You've got to pick one. And the reality is a lot of people try to pick both. And God says it won't work for you to pick both. So I just want you to be encouraged. If you have picked the route of following Christ, you've picked wisely. And if you haven't started serving Jesus with your life, if you haven't trusted him for salvation, do that. Do that soon. Trust in him, because his offer for salvation is a limited time offer. It's only on the table for a little bit. And after you feel that conviction of your sin and it's on the table, just know that it's not always going to be there. It's not always going to be on the table for you. So just know that when Jesus pushes people back from following him, he's not saying don't follow me. He's saying count the cost before you follow me. And that's hopefully something that you're thinking through as a junior high student. Hopefully something that maybe some of you have already thought through, and some of you are already following Jesus. But it's an important lesson that we learned today. So thanks for reading the Bible with us. We'll see you back tomorrow for another daily Bible reading snapshot.